Thought today I'd go over what I'm currently using and why I chose to make a lot of the choices that I made in terms of what my configuration looks like and what tools I'm using. The first thing to note is that this is actually what I run on a daily basis, right? My shell prompt is literally a $sign and a space after it, and as you might be able to tell, this is Tmux on the bottom, and it's very, very plain looking. Now the question that I have to keep asking to myself is, what's the benefit of configuring my system, right? So as you can tell, this is very minimally configured. There's not much room for me to personalize because it literally always stays a $sign. And this is like Tmux. It just looks like that, right? There's really not much color. There's not much anything. So the question is, why did I choose to do this? And why do I think this is better for you? Not in terms of like not customizing anything, but focusing your configuration efforts on one particular application. And for me, that's NeoVim, and for you, it might be something else. So first of all, since a lot of you guys are interested, I'll go over the code that was for my original prompt a while ago for ZSH, which I don't use anymore. But I'll just go over that quickly and kind of give you guys inspiration on how you can customize your shell if that's what you want to focus efforts on. But the first thing to note is that I need to change the font to a nerd font, right? So that the prompt I was using only works with nerd fonts because it requires special glyphs that are only within nerd font patched fonts. So we can do Meslo LGM nerd font mono. And as you can see, the terminal that I'm using is Alacrity, and it has hot reloading capabilities, right? So if you go down here, we have live config reload, which basically allows me to see any changes I make in my config reflected immediately. Now that I have my nerd font loaded, I'm able to go into ZSH and source my ZSH prompt. Now, the code for that, if I just take a look, is really quite simple. It's just this huge line here. But as you might be able to see, all it's really doing is checking a couple of values. The way it's set up currently, it will be blue when there's background jobs and green when there's no background jobs, and it'll be a snowflake when we're not inside a Git repository, and it'll be a fire icon when we are. So if we just go back into here, and you can note I have two colors. One is for the normal theme color, and one is for the theme color when they're background jobs. So that is just cyan, and that is just green. And over here, I do a conditional check. You can read about this in the ZSH prompt docs, which I'll link. But really what I'm doing is I'm just changing the color, I'm clearing the color, I'm getting the code, and I'm changing the color back before putting the final ending brace. So that's not that complicated. You guys might know all these comments here. I'll delete all of these before, I'll delete all the irrelevance before I push this. Now over here we have the git bit, and I have to run a pre-command. I can define a pre-command, and that command will be run before every prompt renders. And basically what I'm doing in here is I'm just checking if we're inside of Git, right? So I have in Git, I just run a pretty big command, and all I do is I check the exit code. So the exit code is 0, then I'll use fire, otherwise I'll use the snowflake. And all I'm doing is I'm just using the exact same pattern here where I choose my theme color based on whether we have background jobs or not. And I just choose my icon, and that's really it. Okay, I don't want to spend too much time on that because that is actually one of the things that I'm trying to get away from. And let's talk about that a bit more. So as you can see, my current prompt, which I've been using for quite a while, is nowhere near as fancy as that ZSH prompt. And the reason why I've chose to do that is because I'm no longer trying to make my prompt look as pretty as possible, period. Right? I'm not really worried about the way it looks. Now what I'm really concerned is my NeoVim config. And once I'm able to focus all my efforts on one thing, I'll be able to do it much better. So I'm using currently an init.lua, so I really don't have any .vim files left in my configuration. But there's still a lot of Vim script code being run, as you can see with all these vim.cmd calls, which are basically just running Vim script code. But the main thing I want to talk about today is the tools that I use. So I'm currently using Fishshell, and the reason why I like Fishshell so much is because of its autocomplete. Now, you can add autocomplete to ZSH, but the autocomplete just isn't as good because for fish, you get way more control over what is actually being autocompleted, and you get descriptions of all the options. So this basically prevents me from having to search up different things, and all I really need to do is just hit tab and navigate through all the options. I'm even able to search through the options with Control S, so maybe I can start searching for JSON, and we have all the options with JSON in it. Fish has syntax hiding, which is kind of already demonstrated here, just by scrolling a bit through. And the key part is these are all built in, which means that you don't have to manage any plugins anymore. Everything is just built in, and it's less work on your end. This might seem counterintuitive because I might seem like the type to want to manage a bunch of different files, but I actually rather prefer to keep my efforts centered on one particular application, which in my case is NeoVim, and have everything kind of just work. That also brings me to Tmux. Tmux is something that I started using recently because I just really felt the need to open up a bunch of terminal windows for a lot of the work that I was doing. And Alacrity, which is the terminal emulator I'm using, does not have support for multiple windows in one application. So the way a lot of applications work is you can be able to hit Command and backtick to move between instances of the same application, but it doesn't work in Alacrity, as you can see here, since these are actually two separate instances of the application, not two windows within the same application. And because of this inconvenience, I've actually gone to learn Tmux. For one point, I was actually pretty invested in Tmux configuration, but in the end, I realized that all I really needed was a simple Tmux setup that just did what I needed it to do. So as you can see here, it's very lightweight. I'm not really doing anything crazy. I have no plugins, and the only thing I'm doing is setting the current active window to underscore and bold. There's not much else. Now this might seem antithetical, but the point that I'm trying to get across is I don't really care about any of these tools, right? As long as they work, as long as they do what they're meant to do, I'd rather focus my time on other things. Now there is an XKCD comic about how much time is saved versus how much time you spent to start saving that time, and I think that applies here. For a lot of the things that I'm working with, such as my shell and Tmux, I really don't care about how they look like as long as they work for me. NeoVim is another story, but I've also been tending towards making NeoVim as functional as possible without trying to make it look too pretty. As you can see, I have a lot of plugins here, but none of them are really just for aesthetics. They're all doing something purposeful. If you guys are interested, I'll post my Tmux, ZSH, Fish, and Alacrity configurations up on GitHub. Thank you for watching.